Hi everyone, and welcome to episode number 7 of the Australian Rock Show, Ozrock's loudest and proudest music podcast. My name is Dennis Gray from the Rock and Roll and Gray Brothers. Today is the 19th of February 2015 when this show is being recorded. Leeno Dee has been plugging his heavy-sounding bass into the Australian rock and roll scene for some time now and is a true survivor. From his earliest days with Wizard and Roxx, through to the notorious Candy Harlots, Jerk, Ink, and now with Melody Black, his life of loud rock and roll has been a fascinating journey with no signs of slowing down. Recently, on the 16th of February, Leeno and I had a good chat about his unique rock and roll life, an interview which we'll play in a moment, but before we do, as we often do, let's get in the mood first with a tune. Here is Leeno with the Aislynch-fronted Candy Harlots with Backstreet Boys. Leeno Dee, welcome to the Australian Rock Show.
Pleasure to be here.
Look, it's great to catch up with you. I guess our history goes back a bit, doesn't it? And we kicked off the show tonight with Backstreet Boys from the Candy Harlots EP 4-play. I know it was also on the T-tapes. Yeah. Personally, sure. I think it's one of the best hard rock songs to ever come out of Australia from an EP which climbed to number 17 on the Australian mainstream charts at the time.
Yeah, that's
now,
right.
when you recorded that material with Aislynch, did you have a feeling it would do that well and actually enter the mainstream charts?
Well, we didn't think it would enter the mainstream charts because we deliberately wanted to lead with Backstreet Boys and Lady Shakes because we thought, let's get something that's really different to what the band was known for before. You know, like let's get something that's a little more hard-hitting and a little more kind of where we're at now. We kind of thought it would be a really cool kind of introduction. That the label had chosen to put out a new version of Danger as the debut single because they just really believed in it, but no one in the band really wanted to rehash an old song that had been released already. But this was our first chance to get some material out there that sounded like the new band really was, which is a lot riffier and a lot heavier. I mean, Backstreet was one of the last songs that Ron Barrett actually pretty much wrote most of, the vast majority of. And that was really him to a T, and it really suited where the new band was at anyway. So, you know, the fact that it charted really surprised us totally. We thought it'd probably work with the fans, but we didn't think it would actually do that well. And then once it got into the charts, it just kind of self-perpetuated because every week, I think Lady Shakes was the video that they ran with and the song they ran with, and that was on every TV station. It was like, I can remember Saturday morning watching.
Yeah.
It was on
Absolutely,
Rage,
I remember that.
The channel, and it'd be on Video Hits, and it'd be on Video Smash Hits, and it just kept selling. So it's kind of cool.
Well, we'll get into the Candy Harlots a bit later. We've got quite a bit of ground to cover tonight in a relatively short space of time, so we'll get right into it. Currently, your outfit, Melody Black, you've been together 5 years now. How are things going with the band? What's the vibe like around the band?
It's been 5 years. The vibe's good. We've had one lineup change, and that Tubby Wadsworth ended up pulling out a couple of years ago. Tubby wanted to concentrate on a bunch of other things that he wanted to do, and he wasn't quite up for the touring and the constant gigging anymore. So it was all amicable, and we've been friends forever. So that wasn't going to change. We ended up getting in another part of the family, which is a guy called AJ, who was in later of a band called Dead Inside the Chrysalis. Prior to that, he was in Killswitch, Sydney band. Yeah, I remember Killswitch. Yeah, and he's been a friend for a long time, and he was really easy because he'd actually come on the road with us in the past and in the Tubby days and just helped out and roadied with us and stuff, sound checks with us, all kinds of stuff. So he knew the material backwards, so it's pretty much a matter of just changing the drum kits and the drummers, and he just slotted right in, which was great.
That's good when it works that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've gotten halfway into recording the second album, which is a really cool departure from the first one. It shows some really cool progress, nothing forced, just kind of where we're headed. And then we kind of had to stop for a little while because AJ actually had to have some major surgery. So we kind of stayed off the road for a little while, but we actually got our first full gig back next week in Sydney at the Lansdowne Hotel, which is going to be really cool. So we can't wait to do that one.
Fantastic. Look, I've got to give you a big pat on the back for the Love Your Demons album. When was that released? 2011. Personally, I think it's a great rock album. It's heavy, sure, but what I especially love about it and was pleasantly surprised is that there are some tunes on there with some really catchy hooks. You know, I love a hook. I'm a hook guy.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about songs like, you know, Do You Need Me? Pretty Ugly, which is, you know, that's snotty 70s punk fuel, I think.
Yeah,
isn't it? Pretty Ugly.
Absolutely.
And I think, I don't know if this comes as a surprise to you, but my favourite track is Who's Crying Now?
No, you know, it doesn't, because I started demoing stuff for Melody Black around about 2003, 2004. While I was still in Jerk, I was coming up with songs that would never have worked in that band, and I was kind of thinking about an outlet for them. And Who's Crying Now is one of the first ones that really gelled for me, that I thought, okay, that's a keeper. And I remember playing it to a few people and having like everything from girls to guys to like hardened metalheads saying to me, wow, what a great tune. You know, even the guy with the Slayer t-shirt and the piercings and everything was saying, wow, what a great tune. So it kind of doesn't surprise me. Okay, so you'd had that in the works for some time then? Yeah, all the material was stuff that I'd been writing over a long period of time. There's the oldest song on that album is Pushover, which I wrote back in 1994. Wow, I wrote that. And stuff that I'd had lying around. And then the newest thing, I think, was Pretty Ugly, which I pretty much wrote about 2 months before we started recording. You've always been able to write catchy melodic songs. Is that a natural talent, do you think, or a skill which you've worked on as being a songwriter? I guess it's hard for you to say, but I mean... Yeah, I really don't know. I think it's your diet. I think my first exposure to music as a kid was hearing Rolling Stones and Beatles records that my parents had. And then the first rock music that actually really pierced my skin, so to speak, was The Sweet. And I mean, you don't have to look too much further for a bunch of beautiful songs, beautifully arranged and written songs with Tim and Chapman, and then what they actually wrote themselves after that association ended. So from there, it kind of led on to the 3-4 minute hook punk pop kind of bands like Cheap Trick and the Sex Pistols and all that kind of thing. All those kind of bands really made up kind of my musical DNA in those early days, you know, and I think that stays with you. Okay, so is that part of your writing process? Like you can see a phrase or something you read, I don't know, and you just jot it down, or how does it work? Occasionally, sometimes some phrase will just pop into my head and I'll just write it down, and or these days, thank God, sing it into my phone, which is even easier. Yeah. It's good days, isn't it? Oh, they're great days for that. Yeah, wherever you are. Pretty Ugly, I wrote in the car in about 15 minutes when I was driving around Sydney, and I pulled over into a parking space, had an idea, had the title, and just sang it into the car. Went home, demoed it, and we recorded it about 3 weeks later, which was great. But it's just I'll either get a hook in my head or a melody or a line that I really like, and it'll grow from there. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. But I really can't explain it. It just kind of happens. Well, just touching on that the way you recorded that tune there in the car. How do you think being in a band now? It's a different era now, isn't it? Especially with social media. I mean, there's artists I know who have, let's just say, a few thousand friends and likes on Facebook, thousands of views on YouTube videos, but often, their gigs are poorly attended and it doesn't translate into album or iTunes sales. What's your take on that? It's totally right. Unfortunately, I think it's been a case of give and take. As we've gotten access to more exposure, easier exposure, and a lot more do-it-yourself stuff, which, of course, when the punk thing happened was really welcome, and that blossomed through the 80s and the early 90s. But now I think it's opened the floodgates to way too much material being released too freely. I don't know how bad that sounds, but when you get too much of something, the quality's bound to suffer, and people get a little kind of desensitized to it. Like, for example, I think, Facebook and social media is a wonderful outlet for promotion, but I'll get like about 100 invites a week because I got like about 5,000 friends on there. I'll get like about 100 invites a week to gigs and releases and notifications about videos and songs. I can't physically take it all in. There was a time when people... It's overwhelming, isn't it? It really is overwhelming. Yeah, well, we'd get demos in the mail in the old days. People would send CDs or tapes, and you'd listen to them and go, wow, this band rocks. Let's try and get them a gig. Let's try and get them on the tour. You discover people that way. But when you're getting bombarded by MP3s and links to videos and links to gig flyers, but there's just hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them, it just becomes like, I just can't do it. And it's a shame because it shouldn't be that way, but it just is literally too much. And, it used to be more like kind of survival of the fittest. The bands that really believed and stuck it out, and even though they may not have gotten anywhere for 5 years, they believed in themselves and they did it because they loved it. Eventually, something might actually come through. All those years of hard work might actually pay off. These days, I find that a lot of acts last, 15 minutes. It's like, I'll put a band together and give it a shot. Whatever's happening, it may not work, but straight away they'll have the whole press kit, the video, the MP3, the this, that, and the other. But
all done from the bedroom, isn't it?
Not really any substance. Yeah, exactly. Whereas in the old days, a band would go out. Sure, we'd get a logo, we'd get our look happening, we'd get photos taken, but there was no substituting that we had to go out there and rehearse 3 nights a week to sound good and be good at our craft and be good at our playing. And we had to go out there and play gigs, and we'd get paid $20 to do a show. And we'd pay $20 for a sound guy, $10 for a lighting guy, so it'd be $10 negative. We'd have to load the headline band's gear in and out, but we'd take those gigs and be glad we had them, And I think by the end of doing that for 4 or 5 years, you become either a really hard and good outfit, which all those bands did, or you chuck it in, and that's just how it worked. Survival of the fittest,
Mate, gone are the days of printing and handing out flyers. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but But to tell you the truth, I used to write away in the mid-'80s to a lot of bands, and they'd send you a demo cassette, and I've still got all that stuff, and you'd really explore it, and you'd really get a chance to listen to it. And now, personally, I still get emailed a lot of stuff, and, the band may look cool, which is often the case, and they've got a cool name, but it just doesn't do it for me. If it's 5 or 10 seconds in it and it hasn't won me over, that's it, next.
Yeah. The art of the song, it's, I don't know, I think, again, maybe showing the age too, I think we learned from probably a better class of artists. And I know that's
good point.
Really,
no, it's true. It's a good point.
But the more rehashed and hand-me-down and kind of watered down stuff becomes from the original source, I think the less there is to gain from it. People are learning from people who learned from someone else, who learned from someone else, who learned from someone else. For example, like a Marilyn Manson learned his tricks from perhaps, let's say, David Bowie and Alice Cooper, to be broad about it. People are now taking what he's done and redoing that, and people are now taking what the next generation have done and rehashing that, and it's getting weaker and weaker. The songwriting's getting weaker. The whole thing is getting a little weaker as it goes on. And I think in 10 years we're not going to have any classics.
No, and I think watered down, that phrase you used is very, very apt. Do you know, just touching on Who's Crying Now, by the way, I think there's amazing guitar work there from Phil Bowley, and I think Melody Black has to be one of the most solid live outfits in Australia today. There's a good pedigree within the band.
Yeah.
Jonathan's vocals are incredible, and to tell you the truth, I don't know much about his background. Were you aware of him before your time in Jerk?
No, I wasn't. No, I was only familiar with Charles, the guitarist. Charles and I, funnily enough, Charles used to come to a lot of Candy Harlots shows.
Nice.
And there's a 10-year age difference between us. And Charles used to come to the shows, and we were one of the first bands, I think, that he cottoned onto. And I met him back then. And he was actually responsible for getting me into Jerk when they were trying out bass players and they were going nowhere. He said, look, I remember this guy that used to play in this band. Let's track him down. And they tracked me down. And I was working on some other band that I was trying to kind of get off the ground and wasn't really happening. And I went along and it just gelled from day one. But John was a big surprise for me because he was very different to most people I'd worked with. He had an intensity that was just a little too real, and that was great, and that really worked for that band. And when we came to trying to get the lineup for Melody Black together, he was one of those guys that I'd thought about, and I thought, I wonder if doing the poppier kind of catchy stuff, with the hard edge, I wonder if it'll really help to have a guy with that kind of attack. And I really wanted to hear it. And then a couple of people said to me, why don't you, what would it be like to have John in there? And I said, okay, I thought it. 2 other people thought it. Let me call him. And he walked in and it just happened,
Yeah.
So,
it's brilliant.
Yeah,
it's good when that happens.
He's really great at what he does.
And you've got an amazing chemistry with Phil Bowley as well. I was doing the math, and it's 25 years since you started working together, maybe longer.
We joined
most
up in
marriages,
1990.
Okay, most marriages these days don't last anywhere near that long.
Yeah.
What do you like about Phil's playing?
He's playing?
Yeah.
He's one of the most It's got nothing to do with that. If our relationship was just a guy that I heard play, and actually, I remember seeing Phil in Show Thunder in like 1983 or 84. There's a band using called Show Thunder. I didn't know who he was. He was stick thin. He was just like hair on a toothpick with this stratty kind of guitar with a whammy bar. I walked in and saw them play for the first time, and I just said to whoever I was with, I remember saying to whoever I was with, that guy's amazing. Like, even back then, his playing was just insane. And, you know, he just never lets me down. He's one of these guys that will sit in a room together, and people don't know him. And this happened through the recording of the Melody Black album, I remember. We'd sit down to do the solos, and he and I do have a really good chemistry. There's a lot of respect there. We'll listen to each other. I remember John and a couple of the other guys, the engineers, whatever, were sitting around, and Phil would rattle off a solo. And they'd be open-mouthed, and I'd think that was great. And I'd say, Phil, I think you've probably got a better one in you. And he'd just quietly rattle off another one, and it would be better. And then the guys in the room would go, he actually improved on it. It's like amazing.
That's good.
And he's just one of those guys. He's lived for guitar playing. It's part of his DNA. It's just him, you know. And as far as a human being goes, we literally are. He's like another brother for me, you know.
Oh, nice. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Good to hear. So you, like me, you probably saw him. What were his other outfits? White Widow, Rags and Riches. You would have seen those bands. Yeah,
well, those Rags and Riches played some shows with the Candy Harlots, and we shared management for a while. And when we needed to get a new guitarist on board, it was just, for me, it was, I knew Phil. I wasn't that close to him at that stage, but I knew him, and we were kind of acquaintances. But I just thought, from a playing point of view, I just thought, you know, if we get him in and play, I just know the rest of the band are going to go, yeah, absolutely.
Well, my brother and I have a huge, long list of guys we've got to get on, guys and girls we've got to get on the show, and Phil's definitely in there because I want to rack his brain about some of those early 80s stories. And,
he would give you a great interview. He's a great guy to talk to.
Fantastic. I mean, DO 86, I mean, that's got to be a highlight.
You know, I've actually just pulled Phil into another band that I'm playing in as well. Not sure if you're aware of Graveyard Rock Stars. Yeah,
I've seen it you've seen it listed online.
Yeah, I've been doing that finally, kind of. I've been friends with Ash, the singer, for quite a long time, and we've always kind of thought about doing something together. And last year, or actually it was late 2013, we had a catch up, and he asked me if I wanted to become a part of it. So, because everyone in the band's pretty much in two bands, but, you know, almost everyone in the band has got a couple of other things going on. Yeah. So, you know, I'm at that point in my life now where I just want to do stuff that makes me happy. So, but I guess
that's 2015 though, isn't it, Leeno?
Yeah.
You've got to have 2 or 3 projects on the go now if you're a musician.
Well, yeah, you know, like Graveyard gives me a chance to kind of live out my Kiss fantasy and put on a lot of makeup and dress up in big boots and do all that kind of stuff and play really heavy down-tuned music, which is cool. And then Melody Black gives me a chance to kind of bring my stuff to the table that I'm writing and, you know, the more punky poppy kind of stuff. And, you know, I'm kind of happy between those things. So, and I've just pulled Phil in as lead guitarist with that as well, and that's going great as well.
So, 2015, what have you got in store for Melody Black? Are you going to put out material or writing and recording?
We're going to keep recording. We're kind of toying with the idea of just putting out the 6 tracks we've got as an EP because we've just been too long between drinks and we're really dying to get it out there. We did release a track called Leather Girl last year. Which
I'm about to play that.
Right, yeah. That came out on iTunes. We did a video for it and put it out there to kind of fill the gap while we were waiting for things to sort of start up again. And we got Sean Bevan to mix that in LA, who I had a relationship, John and I had a relationship through Jerk. He did the Jerk album. So he did a great job of mixing it. So, you know, we put that out. We're thinking we might grab the 6 tracks we've got and maybe do an EP and then I got the idea from Rachel Boland when they were out here.
Yep.
I went and hung out with him for a while. And he
Still
was
friends?
saying, absolutely.
Okay, good.
We're always in touch, and I got the message when they were coming to Sydney saying, hey, dude, there's always a VIP pass for you at the door and all this, and let's catch up. And actually, he and I were sitting backstage talking about how funny it was that we met 25 years ago. And he's like, you know, look, here we are now, 25 years older, and we're both sitting backstage, both still playing in bands. But, you know,
great.
It's pretty cool. He had a photo on his phone of he and I together from the night we met in 1990. He wanted to show it to me, which is really cool. But he was saying, yeah, look, you know, we've kind of not really doing albums now. We're just doing kind of 5-6 track EPs because it's just too hard for people to digest full-length albums at the moment.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought, rather than wait another half year to do another 6 songs, maybe we should just put the 6 out and then do another part later, So
that's something for fans to look forward to. And for Sydney listeners, as you said, Melody Black are on at the Lansdowne Hotel on Friday the 27th of February.
That's correct.
And we encourage everyone to get along to that show and support cool Australian music, and people can check out melodyblack.com. Now, I want to play the tune Leather Girl, which you just spoke about,
sure.
which was released about a year ago, I guess. And
yeah.
Mate, I really dig this. After a few listens, I was hooked. Again, hooked on the hook, which I mentioned before. It's heavy, but again, really, really melodic. Do you want to intro that before we air it, mate?
Yeah, sure. You're about to get an earful of Leather Girl, Melody Black's last single. Enjoy.
Melody Black there with Leather Girl. Now, I believe that the band name comes from the Alice Cooper tune Black Juju, right?
It does.
Through the night, through eyes of alarm. A melody black flowed out of my breath.
Exactly.
That's 1971's Love It to Death. What an album that is.
It's still my favourite.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper
Ballad
album
of Dwight Fry.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be my favourite Cooper record too. Did you see Cooper when he played Sydney in '77?
No, I didn't. No,
okay.
No, I did not. It was, those days were a little tough for me to kind of get to gigs. I was still a little too young to kind of, and I didn't really have anyone to go with,
Well, one of my elder sisters went, and she just said he was incredible, and that memory stayed with her for all her life. But that's probably a good segue. Let's go back a bit to your early days. Besides Cooper, you've previously told me that you were exposed to the Stones via your parents. My parents record player.
We're Italian, right? My parents had an Italian pressing of "Get Off My Cloud" that they brought back to Australia with them. And for some reason, I think it was the hook part of it. Hey, you get off of my cloud. I can remember being obsessed with that when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and just playing that record over and over and over. And I didn't know what I was saying or what it was about or anything, but I just remember being in love with that tune. And that stuck with me. Then I remember my dad had a whole bunch of reel-to-reel tapes of Beatles stuff, again, that he brought back from Italy. And I just remember songs like, Treat Me Like You Did on the Night Before, all that kind of stuff. Melodies, once you get them in your head, you just can't, they're not going anywhere. So
it's a great introduction, though, isn't it, really? The Stones.
Totally.
And the suite, you loved the suite, didn't you? Still love the suite.
A friend of mine, John Jerkovic, is a brilliant guitarist as well. He played in a bunch of Sydney bands like the QVs, and he was in Gold Zeppelin for a long time. I went over to his house one day, I think I was about 8 or 9 years old, and he played me Wigwam Bam. And he said, "You got to hear this record I just taught, Wigwam Bam." And I was just mesmerised. I'd never heard anything like it. And then he showed me a picture. He said, "What do you think they look like?" He showed me this photo. And there was these 4 guys. It was like Motley Crue precursors, like the blonde singer, the redhead guy, the 2 blackhead guys who were covered in makeup, lipstick, eyeliner, panda eyes, the whole bit, silver platform boots. I had no idea. I just thought, oh my God, they're men. That's so freaky, they'd stand out. I was just like, I don't know why, but I really took to it. The suite led to Slade, led to Gary Glitter's early records, Suzi Quattro, T-Rex, inevitably Alice Cooper and David Bowie.
So all the Glitter stuff.
Then the New York Dolls, and then the punk here end of it, the Stooges. The stuff that started happening here, like those early bands like Hush and Supernaut and all that kind of stuff.
Hush had the, don't want to geek out, but Hush had the Cooper support, didn't they, at Sydney?
I don't remember because, again, I wish I'd been able to go,
Yeah, I interviewed Chris Palethorpe many years ago, and he was telling me about that. But so Kiss, I know that you and I both grew up with Kiss. Yeah. And I want to ask you about that because, so clearly some of these bands you've mentioned, the path of rock and roll really is being laid out for Leeno Dee, isn't it? But should Kiss still be around nowadays? It's a tough one, isn't it, do you think?
You know what? It is a tough one, and I know what you mean, because my fondest memories, obviously, are like most people's around our age bracket. It's going to be the 70s, that lineup and the things they did. I wasn't so sure. There was a period there after when the reunion happened. I thought this is kind of cool, But there was a period there after that when it started changing, where I thought, okay, maybe they should really just call it a day. Then I got given some tickets to see them. Their last tour that they did at the what's that Ace Arena, I don't know what they call it today, but I got given tickets to see them And I thought, okay, and I was actually blown away by how good they were.
Yeah.
And I thought,
yeah,
okay,
they are.
I get it. What it is, they've just really done an Eric Carr all over again, but with the other two guys.
Yeah.
They're doing a very slicked up, very tight, very polished version of what the band used to be, which is maybe what the band should sound like today, you know, in this day and age where everybody's more sort of focused on being sharp and sounding more like a record, which is kind of a bit sad in a way, but maybe they're fulfilling what people require today. As far as the show went, they played an hour and a half of classic songs. They didn't overplay. If they'd played too long, it probably would have gotten too stretchy. They were really pretty good. The show was good. I walked out of there thinking, yeah, that was really cool. You know, so I don't know.
So
as long as people
what do you think they should do
play,
they'll continue on, won't they? They'll just continue on with
I
new
just
members.
thought they drop. I mean, there's a lot of talk about, you know, sometimes I wish they just wouldn't talk. You know, when they say things like, Kiss can go on without me and without Gene.
Yeah.
I think, well, no, you know what? It really can't. So, you know.
Well, you know what? We all prayed for a reunion in the 80s, and it was never going to happen. And when it did happen, I mean, I flew to the States and I saw several shows, including one of those classic American arenas in Chicago. Yeah. That memory of that night will just live with me because it was the four of them on fire. And, you know, that was a dream come true. But personally, I think they should have ended it 2001, go back to the no makeup. But like you, I mean, 1980 Australia, you unless you were there, you can't really explain it.
Yeah,
you can't explain it to somebody who wasn't there.
No.
But so I guess so 1980. Let's think 1980. Have you bought a bass guitar then? Are you taking lessons?
I bought my first bass in '79, but my first bass guitar was courtesy of a friend who bought one, and I had a guitar and I was playing it and enjoying it, but he bought a bass and flirted with the idea of being a bass player. We were going to put a band together. After about a month, he gave up, and it was like a jazz bass copy. And I went over to his house and said, "What are you doing with that?" He said, "Nothing. I was just sitting there gathering dust." I said, "Do you mind if I borrow it?" And he goes, "Well, do you want to swap?" And I said, "Sure." So I gave him my guitar, I took the bass, never looked back. I was supposed to give it back to him. I ended up giving it back to him a year later when I bought
So that's 79. So in the early 80s.
78.
78. Okay.
Got my first bass, yeah.
Are you taking lessons all through the early 80s?
No, I didn't take any lessons. I just, you know what, I the first song I played along to was Love Is Like Oxygen in 78.
Yep.
And then I put on Kiss Alive and I just made myself learn it. I just basically plowed through those songs, all four sides, until I kind of had an idea of, you know, how to play those songs. And after that, I just thought I can play bass. And then it just went from there.
Okay, so you're going to have to help me out with the timeline. So was Wizard the first band you joined?
Wizard was the first gigging band. I had a band before that, which I've got a 1/4-inch reel recording of as a 3-piece power trio with school friends, and that never got anywhere. But
no band name?
It was called She, straight after a Kiss song.
She, okay, nice.
Yeah, and it was AC/DC, Stooges, Ramones, Cheap Trick covers, all that sort of stuff. A couple of originals, but Wizard was the first original band, with Wayne Campbell. And
that I know you've mentioned, so obviously that featured a couple of guys who'd go into Mortal Sin. Yep. And Wizard, you mentioned, were heavy on the Iron Maiden influence?
It was very Iron Maiden-y, yeah. The guitarist in the band wrote most of the material in the beginning, and I think he was really influenced by that kind of sword and sorcery kind of stuff, you know, the Rainbow Maiden sort of really riffy long stuff with 50 different changes, and you know, and it was kind of cool because we were all buying Maiden albums back then, so it wasn't a problem.
I have to say, and this is just my own opinion, Leeno, but I'd appreciate your take on it. This period we are talking about, let's just say 83 to 86, they're some of my favourite memories of being into hard rock and metal in Sydney, because it really was underground. It wasn't the mainstream. I mean, now you can see a guy in a suit who listens to Slayer. It's hilarious, but it was underground. Yeah. It was not mainstream. And I have fond memories of that time, going to gigs, shopping at Utopia. Yeah. They later ended up in Martin Place. Listening to Steve Murray on Triple R. But then, as we know, Bon Jovi come along sometime later and make hard rock and metal palatable. But for me, that was the time, that period.
I agree. I mean, I was going out and seeing bands like Boss, as I said, Show Thunder, Lotus, there was bands like Mandrake. There's a lot of hard rock bands playing those pubs. And, you know, I was watching them sometimes playing to maybe 50 people, but the band's always were great. They were always really good bands. They were always playing. And then there was that period where, like you say, it swelled up a little and the crowd got bigger and it really started to become something. That was a good time.
Yeah. So after Wizard breaks up, you form a band called Vandal, which morphs into Roxx.
Wow, yeah, I did. I formed a band called Vandal, and that's correct. Well, 1980.
My brother tells me we may have seen Roxx, but I can't recall it. So what was the Roxx story? ROXX.
It started out as Vandal, and then I can't remember what happened, but something led me to kind of pull out of it. And then I ended up leaving the band after I started it for some reason. And then I got asked if I wanted to come back, and I just said okay, and I came back. And by that time, it had become Roxx. I didn't name it Roxx. One of the other guys named it that. And that's right, they had a bunch of gigs to play, and the bass player that they had wasn't working out. And they said, look, man, you know all the material. Do you mind filling in? Yep. So I went back and played maybe a dozen shows with them. But I had a band called Toys in the Attic on the side, my own thing that I was working on. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure I saw Roxx. I just can't place it. But so around this time period,
gigs.
Maybe it was in. So around this time, are you writing songs for yourself during this time period?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why I'm thinking the reason why I pulled out of Vandal was that it started to get a little too dockety.
Right.
And it wasn't that I didn't like those bands, but it wasn't where I wanted to go. And then the band I was writing for was Toys in the Attic, which I had on the side, and that was a little more me. It was a little more kind of power pop, punky sort of rock, that kind of thing.
Right.
You know, it was always like a cheap, tricky kind of a vibe with that kind of thing.
We're about to touch on the Candy Harlots. So from memory, the Candy Harlots placed an ad on the street looking for a bass player. What was it? You saw that ad and applied. Was it as simple as that?
I've got a beauty for you on this one that I don't think I've ever told anyone. I happened onto the Candy Harlots one night at the Carrying Bar Inn.
Supporting Boss.
I went to see Boss play. Yeah. Because we were friends with Kevin and those guys. So we went to see Boss play, and there was an opening band called Whip, and the middle band was the Candy Harlots. I'd never heard of them before. It was 87. When that came on, everybody in the room, I remember all my friends were looking at them and they were saying, man, these guys look awesome. They look so cool. When they started playing, everybody changed their attitude. Everyone's going, oh my God, they're awful to sing. You can't sing, blah, blah, blah. I was like, this is great. This is like kind of like the Stooges meets Motorhead or something, the way Mark's singing. I'd never heard it, and yet they look like the New York Dolls. This is great. No one's done this. This is awesome. Everyone's going to me, you got rocks in your head. Okay, whatever. They played, they finished. Then I saw them again a few months later at St. James Tavern. And again, the people were going, these guys are awful. They were playing with King's Cross. These guys are awful. And I said, no, look, hey, they're really cool. And they go, no, they're awful. I go, they sound like Gary Glitter tonight. The other night they sounded like Stooges. Tonight they sound like Gary Glitter. And I liked them. And then I remember seeing an ad and it said, Candy Harlots require bass player, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, you know what, I should go for this. And just as I was looking at it and thinking I should go for this, I pick up another copy of On the Street and it's got them playing support for Cheap Trick at the Tivoli. Yeah. And I had tickets to that and I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Like, they've already got a bass player. How did this happen? I went to see them with Cheap Trick. Sure enough, they had a different bass player. Scott, they had a guy called Scott. And I thought, geez, does that happen quick? Oh, well, that's done. That's fine. About a week later, there's another ad in On the Street. I still need a bass player, and I thought, okay, this time I'm going for it. So I sent them off a little package and everything, and I got the call back, and I think I was like one of the last. They were auditioning people for 2 weeks, and I went in and auditioned and got called back for the second one, and that was it.
Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. And I don't know if you know, but first time I actually saw the band were supporting Cheap Trick at the Tivoli, and that's April of '88. I thought they were amazing. Personally, the couple of bass players they had in the lineup at that time were good, but not quite right. First show I saw you with the band, DY Hotel, some months later. All the pieces of the puzzle fit. You suited the band so well. And once I heard your bass on the Specimens Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I thought they found the right guy.
Oh, thanks, man. I'd found my home finally after kind of. It's funny. It's before the Harlots. It was almost like I was looking to put something like that together that I could just never hit it, never find people, never quite knew that I was looking for that exact thing. But I found it, and I thought, okay, now I'm home. Exactly the same thing happened when I ended up in Jerk. I knew exactly what I wanted the band to be, and I wanted what I wanted it to sound like. Just couldn't find the people, and they found me. So, it's really nice when that happens.
Definitely. So, and for you, I guess it's happened, 2 or 3 times in your career.
Yeah, it's just it's a little bit luck, and it's a little bit kind of being around and people know what you do and what you're capable of.
Perseverance as well, hard work. So thinking back to that time period, and we'll take a break in a moment, I'm going to play a song, but they were heady days for the Candy Harlots. There was a huge buzz around the band. You were dubbed Sydney's biggest live secret. The debut 7-inch Red Hot Rocket sold out in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Did it feel like you were riding a wave towards something bigger with that lineup of the band?
It did. With the Mark Eastman lineup, yeah, it did. It felt like something had to give, but unfortunately we started getting played a little bit by, the people that kind of really want things, management. I don't want to put blame on anyone because everybody wanted the common sort of thing to happen. Everybody wanted us to work. We'd sign a publishing deal, and then the publishers would say, okay, you've got to tone down this, you've got to kind of try and get the ears of people, and maybe you should tone this down, maybe you should tone that down, maybe you should drop this song because it's got the word slut in it, maybe think about changing the name because harlot isn't a word people like saying in America. And it's like, there was one guy that wanted to sign us to his label, and he was distributed by Polygram, so it would have been worthwhile. Mm-hmm. He had us in for a meeting. He had a live tape of the band playing. I don't know where he'd gotten it, but he was playing this live tape of the band, a desk tape, and he was telling us how great everything was. Then he told us he wanted us to make the look a little more street and go into a studio and demo a whole bunch of new songs and maybe think about recording some covers and all this kind of stuff. And we just ended up turning around and saying, look, we're not the band for you,
Sure.
And it pissed our manager off because he thought finally they're going to get a deal, but we just really didn't. Ron wouldn't have stood for that. Mark wouldn't have stood for that. I didn't agree. I thought, what we've got is what we are. Let's just persevere with this. It ended up getting the better of Mark. A couple of things, contributed to him leaving, some personal stuff, but also the fact that he was just really sick of being told, be this, be that. And really, we all were. And unfortunately, it got to breaking point. And then Ron passing away didn't help because he was really a really, really big part of the heart and soul of that band. And once he was gone, it was just whatever that original lineup stood for, it just wasn't there anymore.
Well, from a fan's perspective, that tag, biggest live secret, is accurate because I think 88, 89, that era of the band is where my fondest memories are. And apart from a few others, we felt like we discovered this, what every fan dreams of, this cool rock and roll band on the verge of exploding, which the mainstream public had yet to hear about. It was such a cool thing, but importantly, the band was just as good, if not better, than anything from overseas. And you just shared some memories there. But personally, from Blacktown in the west, inner city, Coogee, the northern beaches, that car of mine clocked up some serious miles.
You guys came to Geelong, didn't you?
Mate, yeah, we made it to Geelong and Richmond and Victoria. Do you recall that first Melbourne jaunt?
Absolutely. I think I have a photo I might have a photo of you guys standing outside a blackboard at the Bowen Club, perhaps, or a live tape that you made, or
yeah.
I think that's
the Richmond show. The Richmond shows is especially memorable for me because that's when I first saw a band called Girl Monster, an act who opened for you, which in turn led to friendships with Anne and Sherry, who I'm still good friends with to this day.
Oh, you know what? Remind me to them because I haven't had any contact with those people in a long time, and they were really nice people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will do.
Good people.
But the debut single Red Hot Rocket was produced by one of our heroes, my heroes, Mick Cox. What are your memories of recording that tune with Coxie?
Well, okay, Red Hot Rocket. Okay, the truth of that matter is I wasn't in the band at that point.
Okay.
That's Mick and Goody playing bass on that song. They had the single recorded and they went in and did it with Mick because they couldn't find the guy they wanted to use, like a new bass player yet, so they just went in and recorded it.
Okay.
And when will I know as well? So I came in for the release of that. So unfortunately, I wish I could say I had memories of Mick Cox from that, but unfortunately, no.
I mentioned a moment ago your ability to write songs with cool melodies, and the Candy Harlots' second single, Danger, is further evidence of that. Did you have that tune up your sleeve, or did you write it around that time period?
I wrote that song in 1987, and when it was Mark Easton. Everybody had this idea of Mark as being, the arrogant front man and the star of the show and all this kind of stuff. in the end, the only reason I brought songs in was because Mark was saying to me, "Have you got anything? I'd like to hear it." And I brought in a song, and we kind of toyed with it for a while. It didn't work. And then he said, "Have you got anything else?" And I said, "Well, I've got this." And I pulled out Danger, and he just fell in love with it. And the rest of the band loved it, and they just did a great job of it, and it ended up being the single. And then the only reason I ever ended up doing She Shines on stage was because Mark insisted that I take center stage and sing that song. It was Mark.
It was a good call.
That was Mark's idea. I brought it in for him. He tried singing it at rehearsal, and he said, "You know what? You sell it better. You should do this." And I was like, "Are you crazy? I've never sang in my life. And like, you're the guy, you know, like you are this band." And he's like, "No, man." He had it all down. He was like, "No, man, I'm going to put the mic stand. You're going to use my mic stand. I'm going to put it in the center."
No, that's interesting. So that's the first time period where you thought, you know, you have strong vocals, or you didn't think that before? I
could sing well enough to demo, and actually I've just found I don't know how it ended up there, but I just tonight when I was doing a bit of searching around the Rock Brat site and stuff, and I found that there's the very first song that I ever recorded in my life that I sang on, a song called Heart to Heart, is up on YouTube, and I have no idea how it got there or who put it there, because I don't even know if I have a copy of it. So I'd done a song, but it was pretty much just for demoing purposes.
The version of Danger, which found its way onto the Five Wicked Ways album, is slicker and heavier. But as I have a fondness for the Mark Easton lineup, if I can use that reference, that's the track I'm going to play today. But before we do, can we drift back to the year 1990, and we're well into this. A year filled with highs and lows for the band, more touring. Still you have, I guess, you got major labels, couple sniffing around, I guess. Maybe you release another record.
Yeah, we did.
And as many of us remember, guitarist Ron Barrett tragically passes away in late 1990. Personally, I chatted with him many times whilst following the band, and he was always decent and a good guy who lived and breathed for his music. Do you have one Ron story you'd like to share before we play Danger?
Oh, look, when I first joined, when I first tried out for the band, Ron wasn't present. He was in the States. When he got back, he was at the second jam, and he just said, why are we even questioning it? He's the right guy. He just basically voted me in straight away. He just said, this is the right guy. And in the beginning, though, I wasn't too sure about Ron. The other guys I got on really well with Hugo. I got on really well with Cardinal. Easton was a little standoffish at the beginning. I think that was him being the singer. And the guys warned me about that. They said, you know, look, Mark's likely to be a little cool because he wants to assert his position. But after a little while, we became really close. Ron took me a longer time to warm up to because he was really brash, really arrogant, really kind of, you know, spoke his mind and didn't give a shit who heard or, you know. And I thought, okay, I've got to tiptoe a little around this guy. In the space of about 2 years, the most amazing thing happened. Ron just kind of changed. He just really matured and grew up. And he and I began sharing rooms together on the road because we ended up getting on so well. I can remember one of my last memories was sitting on the balcony high up above the Gold Coast when we were playing Queensland, and he and I was sitting on the balcony having a beer and having a chat and just talking about how excited we were about how good the band was going to be because we just got Phil in. He was really excited. He said, look, I feel like we've got a hold on this again now, and I feel like we're going to be able to do something. He was really positive, and he was great. We were getting on fantastically. He was writing great. He was playing great. We were starting to talk about writing stuff together. It could have been great. And then my last memory of him was a few nights after that, our first absolute sellout of the Journal Burke Hotel, where the full house sign went up like about an hour and a half before we played. And the Baby Animals opened for us. It was one of their first shows, one of their earliest shows. Okay. They were brilliant. And at the end of the night, spirits were really high. You know, like the last thing Ron said to me was, see you Monday, Leens, because we were going to catch up. And I said, yeah, man, see you Monday, you know, and that was it. And that was the last time I saw him, which was a bummer.
That's nice. Look, 26 years old is way too young to exit, and I hope that this interview and indeed other articles I've written about the Candy Harlots ensure that his memory lives on. And with that thought in mind, here is the Candy Harlots featuring Ron Barrett on guitar on the Leeno Dee written Danger. The Candy Harlots there with Danger, with some really nice guitar work there from Mark to Hugo. Live, he was an amazing player, and it's a shame that we didn't see the best of him on record or CD. Personally, I think the guy's an incredible talent. I would like to see him join a band where his talent is recognised and at the fore. What do you think, Leeno?
Look, when I joined the band, I think Mark became like my little brother. You know,
Okay.
I was the newest member, and he became pretty much like my little brother. Like, we just hung out. We hit it off most immediately out of everybody. So we hung out a lot. We went out all the time. We were out, 24 hours a day. Mark was sleeping on my bedroom floor, and
Right.
we were really close. So it wasn't the happiest day in my life when that decision was taken and stuff had to change. I really wasn't happy about it, but it's a band. So
Sure.
I think his ability was mind blowing, because he was so young and he hadn't a lot of experience at all, and he was such like a wild stallion, hadn't yet kind of had a chance to really hit his straps. He just was raw talent, like he just had it all down. His playing was amazing, and yeah, you're right. He didn't have a chance to kind of really mature within that band and kind of grow with it, and he really could have gone places.
So it's early 1991 and Easton exits the band. Are you thinking that might spell the end for the Candy Harlots? Was there, did the other guys want to carry on? How did that work back then?
Nobody knew. We thought it was going to fold after Ron died, because I remember Phil and I sitting in the car when we were told the news. Phil picked me up, and I remember sitting in the car going, "Do you want to do this?" I don't think I want to do this anymore. And somehow it ended up becoming what it did. But when Mark quit, it was a whole other kettle of fish. Mark said to me, "You know what? You want to keep the name, you want to keep it going. You have my blessings. It's all good. Keep doing it if you want to do it. But I just can't do it anymore." And he took off.
Okay.
And I gave it a lot of thought at home, because I remember thinking, "This is futile. Like, there's like the only real original member from the beginning is Tony. What are we doing here? Are we going to carry on with this name that's been around for a while? And what are we going to?" It took a long time for me to kind of think about it. I'm not saying it was solely up to myself, but I was just saying that as far as from my little corner of the world, I remember sitting at home and thinking, what will I do? And I remember getting a phone call from Barton Price, who was like a rock star, a real rock star, the models who I'd gone to see and bought records and everything. I got a phone call from him saying, "Hey, I'm putting this band together. I've heard your band's going to fold because your singer's quit. I'm putting this band together, and we've got a deal, and we've got this, and we've got that. And what do you think?" And I remember being absolutely mind blown, thinking, "Oh my God, Barton Price from the Models is." He said, "I love the way you write. I love the way you perform. You can sing, you can play. You'd be a real asset to this band I'm putting together." And I remember thinking, right then, as much as I'm flattered by this, he's just given me an impetus. He's just said, "Look, you're capable of all these things. Come and do it here." And I've thought, well, why don't I put all of that into this band I've been a part of for the last few years? And see if we can't. It's a challenge. So, the four of us got together and discussed it, and we thought, let's go in the opposite direction. Let's not do the super glam novelty blonde front man with all the gimmicks and the stuff, which we really enjoyed and were a lot of fun. But if we try and do that, we're going to get killed. Let's just go in a different direction and just be a hard rock band and try and write good songs and try and put on a great show and see if that works.
Well, I recall bumping into you at a Killing Time show at the Hopetoun, and you said something like, "Don't expect anything like the old band." Yeah. And you were right, because although the name was the same, they totally different, well, not totally different, but different musical styles. And the Five Wicked Ways era, it turned out to be an amazing ride. You tour the country in support of a major label album. You get airplay, front cover of Duke, just racking my brain, AC/DC support.
Yeah, lots
I mean,
really
personally, the AC/DC support, you could die right there, couldn't you? I mean, that must have been amazing.
It was pretty amazing. You know what? We went from, to tell you the truth, pretty much our management giving up on us. And basically, they didn't say it in so many words, but the vibe was there that, look, Mark's gone, there's nothing here. Our publisher basically backed away from us. Our booking agency, who I think we'd made a hell of a lot of money for over the years, basically just stopped wanting to know. We were reduced to trying to find singers from other bands, and we had people saying to us they didn't really want to join a sinking ship. So, we'd have some guy and a singer, and we'd think, even though this guy's not not what we want. It'd be nice to just get in with a different voice and see what it feels like. And we'd have some guy in a band that was fourth on the bill at the cut owner or something saying to us, oh, look, we've got big things lined up for our own band. I don't think, I'd really want to be a part of your band. And we'd think, okay, that's fine. So we basically really were reduced to just the four of us, just writing songs and jamming as a four-piece and just thinking the right guy will come along. The right guy for that band did come along. And we went from being on the bones of our ass to, I remember, suddenly we're in the studio at Albert's recording an album. We've got a major deal. We're shooting the cover of Duke. I'm flying to LA to mix for 3 weeks with the same guy that's worked with Van Halen and Aerosmith and Vane. And then I get back off the plane and we're going into rehearsals for the AC/DC tour. And I'm thinking, shit, what a turnaround,
and a turnaround in a short period of time, really.
In no time, really. After 4 months of banging the head against the wall, thinking no one wants to know, no one wants to help, to within 2 months, all of this stuff's happening. There's a single out, we're shooting a video, people are throwing stuff at us. It's amazing. Phenomenal.
And obviously you've got a lot of great memories from that time period, but just moving ahead. So, look, 92, 93, grunge comes in, as is well documented. A lot of the hair and sleaze rock bands, for a while at least, get pushed aside. The kids wanted Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all that. All eyes were on Seattle instead of the local scene. It must have been weird to be inside that, like a band, that musical vortex at that time. Could you see what was happening to hard rock and metal, which you'd grown up with? Could you sense it?
I thank Mike for this. Mark Easton, before he quit, he'd started getting into Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, the facelift album.
Right.
And Mark was playing that stuff in Jane's Addiction. He fell in love with all that stuff. So I got exposed to it through him and found that I didn't know what those bands looked like. They just sounded like much heavier versions of kind of what I liked anyway. So I just kind of thought, well, this sounds Sabbathy, and I like Sabbath. This sounds Zeppelin, I like Zeppelin. This sounds like something else altogether, But it didn't really hit me until I went to LA that first time in 91, and I noticed that it wasn't what I expected. The scene was...
It had changed. It had shifted, hadn't it?
Yeah, well, I ended up seeing Pearl Jam at the Cat House because our record company rep over there was really good friends with Jeff Ament, and Jeff Ament turned up and we went to the sound check and he introduced me, and I had no idea what to expect. So I came back to Australia, and a few months later, they busted out really big. He was also telling me about a band he'd worked with at Geffen called Nirvana, and I thought, okay, well, I can't wait to hear them. What are they going to be like? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
sure. No one knew. No one could have known that. So time moves forward. Ace Lynch exits the band. You get a new vocalist in Hayden Watt, change the band name to Helter Skelter. Are you signed to EMI at this time?
EMI bought the Virgin and bought us as an asset as part of it. We were one of the only acts they held on to because we'd actually had some chart success. We'd gone to number 32 nationally with the album. So they held on to us and picked up our second option. But they proposed a complete overhaul of the band. They said, look, we want to hold on to the band, but we want you to, with everything that's happening out there, and I don't mind admitting it, we went along with it because we thought we worked so hard on this. If we can still do what we want and do stuff we believe in, let's listen to them. So they were like, you need to change the name, you need to change the look, you need to do this. We basically just had to think about it and thought, okay, well, we're not going to turn into a Seattle band. That's not going to happen. We're not going to wear check shirts and baggy pants. That's not us. But it's not a stretch for us to go heavier because we all had that in our backgrounds. We're all Zeppelin fans. We all loved Pantera. We all loved that stuff. But okay, we can kind of push the stuff a little further that way. And with the right producer, which we got the right producer, we really made a really credible, cool second album. Unfortunately, EMI being what they are, they then heard the album and said, this is too heavy. This isn't going to work. And shelved it. So,
wow. So at that time period when there's the charts are filled with heavy music, they're saying it's too heavy, that second album.
Really, the people that looked after us at Virgin were all about music. The people that looked after us at EMI, it's like they were at the Commonwealth Bank.
Business.
Yeah, the people there at the time, there was one or two people who were really, really into it, but they didn't have enough push to kind of make it work. The people that were looking after us weren't looking after us. They were basically just trying to keep their jobs, I think. So, unfortunately, that's the way it went.
Okay. So, in spite of the changing musical climate, the future rolls on, and you're still active with the Harlots, Velvet Claws. I saw you one night with the Killer Cowboys outfit, Killer Cowboys. Dearly beloved. And okay, as someone who's had an interest in your career, it's fair to say that your next two bands, Jerk and Ink, were far heavier than anything you'd done before. So I guess you're being influenced by what was around at the time, Therapy, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson.
I think you find when I first heard Manson, I mean, I know it was very industrial, but when I first heard Manson and saw Manson, I just thought he's doing a new version of Alice Cooper to suit today. So I was good with that. I was cool with that. Nine Inch Nails I'd fallen in love with because actually, again, Rachel Bolan in 1993 had said to me when I was here for that Guns N' Roses tour, he said, "Dude, have you heard Nine Inch Nails?" And I was like, "No, I never heard of them." And he said, "You have to check them out." They had opened for Guns N' Roses and Skid Row in Europe, and he said, "You got to hear them. They're the way. They're like the future. You got to hear them." And I remember picking up on that later and looking out for them and thinking, "Wow, this is really cool. This is really, really cool and fresh and all that sort of stuff." So you sort of move along. You don't suddenly turn your back on the things you loved, but you add new things to that melting pot, which is what I think we did with those bands. Like when Jerk happened, like I said, I was at home demoing stuff that kind of had that feel, but I wasn't pulling it off by myself. And when Jerk happened, I walked into it and it was like, wow, this is exactly what I had in mind. So, and I think everybody in that band, it was the same melting pot of influences,
Nine Inch Nails, I was at, I saw Guns N' Roses at Wembley with Skid Row and Nine Inch Nails in 91, and I thought they were pretty impressive. And I also saw Therapy in London in 93 or 4. Trouble Gum, the album is phenomenal, and I recommend anyone to hunt. It is a phenomenal album, and Andy Cairns wrote some great tracks. But so at the turn of the millennium, you've just mentioned, you're in Jerk, you signed with Sony. I know people who saw you at the Metal for the Brain Festival, the Long Gone Festival in Canberra at the time, who said they said Jerk were absolutely incredible and the best band on the bill. How did Jerk finish and Ink come about?
Jerk. I mean, Jerk finished with the departure of John, and we sort of rattled on for a little while with a replacement, and he was, really, really good performer, good singer in his own right, but it just, you've heard this before, it just wasn't the same. Having been through that lineup change thing with singers before, I was just really skeptical that it was going to work. But again, the band was signed, the label believed in it, the label wanted us to keep going, so we gave it a shot, but no one's heart was really in it after that. So, that didn't last very long. When that band folded, it was just pretty much, look, this just isn't going to work, so let's just kill it. And we did that, and then three of us stuck together, and we got John back in, and we did Lamar, the drummer, who was like the main architect behind Jerk, just kind of had enough of it all and just really needed a break from it all. Otherwise, we would have ended up pulling him in as well. But that's how it started, basically.
I really, really like the tune "Beautiful Weakness." Before I play it, we're going to play that. I want to intro it with a fan review which I found online. You may have seen it, and I quote, "Ink are an amazing band. Last time they came to Canberra, they earned some lifelong fans. In my opinion, Ink is Devoy and Leeno's best incarnation by a long shot. Beautiful Weakness combines power and, dare I say, beauty. Fantastic vocals and awesome guitar work. The EP in which this song features, Lead or Follow, is incredible. Strong start to finish, 5 stars from me." High praise from a fan there. Let's crank it.
That's great. That's really nice.
Ink there featuring Leeno Dee, the man we have on the other end of the phone, on bass with Beautiful Weakness. And I love that song, as I mentioned. When I first heard it, again, heavy as lead but wrapped in melody, which is really nice. But so in 2009, there's a Candy Harlots reunion, the lineup of Lynch, Bowley and Dee, Cardinal and Massey, reformed for a one-off concert at the Gaelic Theatre.
That's right.
How did it feel to step back into that world for that one night?
It was good fun. I mean, I had no illusions that it was going to be any more than that. For me, it was pretty much just good fun. It was nice to just get together, and pretty much did it because I hadn't spoken to Ace for a long time, and I was told by someone that he was really ill and he'd been through some really bad times. So I just thought, well, get me his phone number, I'll give him a call, and I did that. we had a chat, and he just expressed, like his desire to have one more shot at singing those songs and just seeing what it felt like again. So I thought, hell, while the whole time I was in Jerk and the profile went back up again and people were hearing about me, I was getting promoters contacting me all the time saying, are you keen to do a Harlots reunion? And I just say, look, I'd be an idiot. Why would I want to go back and do that now?
Sure.
I'm doing an album with this new band and we're touring, and for me, I've moved on. I don't really, it's not that I don't value what that band was, but it was 20 years ago. Let me keep doing what I'm doing. Sure. When, later on when it all kind of changed and everything, and I spoke to A's and I thought, you know what, if one of those promoters is still interested, let's see if we can make it happen. And actually, I contacted one of the promoters and he just said, yep, and he really did us a really, really sweet deal. He made it as easy as possible for us to get together and do it. He produced the show, and then it was meant to be a one-off. Then the Melbourne promoter jumped on and said, we really want you to come to Melbourne. So I had time to do one more show, because at that time I was touring the second Ink EP, Like Water Rain. So we were touring the East Coast, and then I did Candy Harlots rehearsals. Then I went back out with Ink. Then I got back to Sydney and did some more Candy Harlots. We were doing it like that. Then I'd go back out and do Ink shows, like we do the Victoria and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Then I'd come back to Sydney, and then we did the Candy Harlots gig, and then the week after that I did the Skid Row tour with Ink as well. Wow. So it was a really busy part of the year. And I think there was one night where I had an Ink gig one night and a Candy Harlots gig in Melbourne the next night. So it was pretty full on.
It's nice to be able to get that opportunity, though, just to revisit and then just, even though you're involved with current projects. But
it was great fun.
Mate, we are coming to a close, and let me hit you with a random question. So, like me, you would have seen countless local bands over your career. Is there anyone in particular who stands out that you were convinced should have made it but didn't?
Wow, that's a big one, because there have been a lot. There have been a lot. That's a really tough one. There was a while back there where I thought, as far as the logical follow-up to AC/DC that should have really busted big, Heaven, I thought were just on fire. I used to see Heaven as much as I could, all the time, and I bought the albums, and when I went overseas and started touring, I just thought, man, they're going to make it, Yeah. But I think they fell prey to the same sort of problems that we fell prey to. You're only as good as your weakest link. When something gives out, it's just not the same anymore. But I really thought they were going to be huge. And those songs,
all those Heaven tracks still stand up and sound better than ever. But it is a tough one. For me, one of the bands which will bring back some memory, it's the Rum Barbers, a band who supported the Candies a lot. And, visually they were one of the most exciting bands to watch. Musically, they had some amazingly well-crafted songs. A really, distinctive sound. Sandy had a really distinctive voice. That'd be one of my choices. So.
Yeah, we're still in touch too with a lot of those people. We're still good friends.
Good.
With those guys,
good.
Yeah.
We better close off. Thanks so much for your time today. It's been great catching up. And
it's been my pleasure, Dennis. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, we've got a lot of memories. So let's close out with one of your choice cuts. What would you like to hear and why?
Like an Aussie band?
Yes, please.
You know what? I've been tossing up. There's a few tracks that I've been throwing around. One would be Tickle Your Fancy by Taste. One would be, believe it or not, Best Deal in Town, Campbell, which I still remember from being a kid. Supernaut.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go with The Saints, I'm Stranded. That still gets my blood pumping.
You can't go wrong with that. That's a classic.
People listen to this. This is what it's all about.
Thanks for your time today, Leeno.
Pleasure, Dennis. Anytime.